an officer in September. Um, but I'm not finished with my MBA yet. I hope to graduate in June or July timeframe. So I'm very much looking forward to that. But when John and Nancy reached out to Angelique, my partner, and I, this was very special to me, mostly because my grandfather 2 years ago passed away from Parkinson's disease. And it was a tough time for him and my grandmother. So this is a very important meeting for me, and I really appreciate that you all were willing to give me the time to speak with you all and go through, learn a little bit about podcasts. And I hope we can do this again in the future. Okay, so moving into, I've got the screen share. How do you all do it when you have webinars? Do you typically just kind of yell out if you have a question, or do you prefer the hand raise option?
I think it would be better if you give your presentation, and then I think maybe the last 15 or 20 minutes or however much time is left could be open to questions. But if somebody has a burning question right at the moment, you'll see their hand and call on them.
Perfect.
And can everybody just check to make sure that you don't have a TV or a radio on? We can hear something in the background.
Mhm.
Well, that sounds better.
Oh,
Okay. Okay, take it away, Cole.
okay. Perfect. Let me just, I accidentally went backwards. There we go. Okay. So, my last question before I start. Does everyone have an iPhone? Does anyone have an Android? Or do we have a mix?
How many have iPhones?
Okay. See a few
How
hands.
many Androids? I guess kind of a
Okay, so
mix.
we've got a little bit of both. Perfect. That's just something we like to do, just to get a sense of our crowd. I have both my iPhone uh, and a burner Android. So we will be something that we love to do at Senior Tech Connect is to teach on both platforms, iPhone and Android when it comes to smartphones, so that everyone can learn something and take something away from here. Okay. All right. So podcasts. I'm going to go to the next slide. So today, we're going to have a quick class on learning about what a podcast is. We're going to learn about different kinds of podcasts. These days, it's basically everything. I'll give you the heads up on that. Where you can find them, how you can download them, and also how podcasts can benefit us.
Difficulties.
Everything okay, Nancy?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
still baffled by who's talking in
I
the
think
background.
someone is okay.
No,
Just talk right over them.
black screen.
Okay. Sounds good. Um, oh, maybe is that Shirley?
Yes, Sarah.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were
Let me change.
I, I was hoping that my grandmother would call in and her
Oh,
friend is Shirley. So uh
Oh,
sorry about that. Okay. And so
that's
those
okay.
are our presentation objectives. What I wanted to do, special request from John, is I wanted to play a quick podcast snippet from the Michael J. Fox Foundation. And this is a podcast that I was able to find on Spotify from their podcast service. And so just 1 second, I'm going to play about a clip that's 2.5 minutes.
Being linked to problems in the brain. So can you talk about the evidence in this area?
So we are very interested in the connection between the brain and peripheral organs. one of the things that we recognize is that your immune system in all tissues is in charge of keeping the house clean and tidy, removing toxic proteins and debris. So one of the ideas is that perhaps knowing that Parkinson's is a systemic disease, it doesn't just involve the brain, but that there are manifestations outside the brain, including gastrointestinal dysfunction. One theory is that for some people, the disease may start outside the brain, perhaps with aggregation and propagation of the culprit from Parkinson's, which is alpha-synuclein. And if that alpha-synuclein in the gut increases with triggers like inflammation and other bacterial exposures or pesticides, anything that will give inflammation has been shown to increase the nuclein levels, that could be a trigger for the misfolding and aggregation, which could then go from the gut into the nervous system, either through the anatomical connections with the vagus or simply through the circulation and across the blood-brain barrier, communication with the brain. And it is still a testable hypothesis that it may begin outside the brain for some individuals. Certainly the preclinical models in rodents and non-human primates support this idea, but it's still being tested. And the other piece of that is that because Parkinson's is a systemic disease, we feel that the immune system will respond to neurons in trouble. And because there's a communication between the brain and the outside, the peripheral immune systems in your blood, those cells are able to receive signals from the brain that come out into the circulation. And sometimes the cells that go into the brain can sense those signals. And our idea is that by focusing on immune responses in your blood cells, we might be able to pick out early clues about risk for individuals that have certain immune dysfunction. And that could lead to more inflammation, which would then increase the risk for neurodegeneration.
All right. Did everyone hear that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, if you're like me, you might not have totally understood all of the technical and medical information that was just discussed in that podcast. However, I just wanted to play this podcast just as a little snippet to see this is the power of podcasts. This is how educational they can be. This is how revolutionary they can be in our daily lives, in our ability to learn just by plugging in our phone, listening in on earphones, and just hearing all of the great information and knowledge that's out there. From a show of hands, do we have any listeners that already use podcasts on a daily basis? Okay, awesome. I'm not seeing any. If you do, just speak up real quick, and I will use you as our star student for the next couple slides when I have any questions. If not, I will be that person. Okay. All right, moving on. So what is a podcast? A podcast is an audio program, like we just heard, that's available on the internet. So whenever you're surfing on the internet, when you download the app, the podcast app, you're able to stream pre-loaded and pre-saved audio recordings through your phone. There's so many different podcasts on basically like any subject in today's day. They're for entertainment. Most are free of charge. There are some podcasts, we can talk about it. There are some podcast apps that will charge a subscription. And so that's why here on the bottom we say they're typically recurring. They may be daily, weekly, bi-monthly, or monthly. And that also talks about how often the owners of the podcast will publish or will essentially record their podcasts. I think of it as recording a radio station. so that you can listen to every episode of a radio station when you might not be in your car or at the place where it was recorded at that time. Everyone's still following along okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Great. Okay. So types of podcasts, like I mentioned, there's comedy, there's news, society and culture, crime, sports, even TV and film, business, art, and basically anything else that you can think of. I really enjoy podcasts on finance. I also enjoy podcasts that are from basically world news that talk about current events throughout the world, especially in today's day and age when the news seems to be changing by the minute. Okay, so where can you find podcasts? I'm gonna slide this window over real quick. So on the right side of your screen, you can see the one that I use is Spotify, because I already have a subscription on Spotify for music. Spotify is known as basically a subscription application for music, audio books, as well as audio podcasts. Um, its competitor would be Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts, which on the Apple side of the house, they're split. So there's both Apple Podcasts, which is the purple little application that you see on the page. And then there's Apple Music, which I can show you right here, if everyone can see. Apple Music is, it's a little blurry.
See who's
It's this guy right there, the red. Does everyone see that?
I don't see it.
Hold on one sec. Mm, hard to see, but it is a red music symbol or music note that is Apple Music. I will pull it up one more time. Where was I?
Well, if you just want to continue, maybe we can come up with it later, or maybe somebody will find it on their phone.
Looks like we lost the call.
Hey, take over, Wilson. Just kidding.
Roger, we can hear your background noise.
It's mine, huh?
Thank you.
I'm so sorry about that. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
I think my connection just completely got zapped. I will pull this up one more time. Okay. Okay. Are we back where I left off?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry for cutting out on that. What was the last thing that you all heard me say?
You are showing us a symbol for Apple?
Yes. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull up Apple Music app. Pull it up on images. This is it. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. So that is the app for Apple Music. For most people that have an iPhone, that is already pre-populated into your phone. So you should be able to find it or search for it on your phone. Would anyone like a few minutes to try to locate that on their phone?
What about if you have an Android?
Yes, Android is going to be something different, which I will pull up right now. So what I use on Android is Spotify. And that is, I will search it.
It's the green one with the 3 bars.
Correct. That's something like this. Can you see that?
Yep.
Spotify.
Yep.
And it's also on the slide that we have here on the bottom right. It's green. But what also for Android users, the other option that you have is Google Podcasts. So this is Google Podcasts. Um, excuse me. If you look up on your phone, Google Podcasts, you should see an application with this uh, kind of dotted, different multicolor square, where you should be able to open up your podcasts. If you're not able to find that, you can also find it on the Google Play Store. I'm going to give everyone just a few moments to look on their phones and find one of these apps that they can click on or mess around with, at least while we're going, so you feel like you can follow along. And if there are any questions, please just reach out and let me know.
Let me get my phone first.
No worries. So I'll just repeat myself on Apple. You have Apple Podcasts, or if you choose to use Spotify as a subscription service, you can also download Spotify. Spotify is available on both Apple and Android. Any platform has Spotify available. There's also Audible, which is a different app that also specifically focuses on podcasts and audiobooks. For Android users, again, you can use Audible, you can use Spotify, or what you can use is Google Podcasts, which is right here. Oh, it looks like my grandma made it. Hi, Grandma.
I've been watching, but I can't really make use of that in my own life, but I am watching.
That's okay,
Hi,
Grandma.
Nancy.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. How are we doing? Are there any questions while we're looking for these apps?
I managed to install the Google Podcast on my phone. It's the one with all the rainbow colored dots.
So you found it?
Yeah, I found it on the Play Store. Google
Great.
Podcasts.
Yes. So in order to download an app, you'll go through the Google Play Store if you have an Android. And I will show, would anyone like me to show what that looks like?
Sure.
Okay. So this is the Google Play Store. So it's a symbol of a play symbol with all the colors of Google. So typically, if you are on your Android, and let me go to my home screen. So here's my home screen. What I'll do is I'll just click this bottom button right here that allows me to search or look for my apps. And then up here on the top right, I can click the little magnifying glass for search. And then I'll type in Google Play. And then that comes up right there. Is there anyone with an...
I got
Go
I got
ahead.
a question. I got a message saying after April 2nd, 2024, Google Podcasts will no longer be available. Start listening on YouTube Music as an alternative.
Okay. What was the last sentence that it said?
It said start listening on YouTube Music as an alternative.
YouTube Music. Okay. So that's as of April 2024. So it's up to you if you'd rather use Google Podcasts until April, or if you'd prefer, you can just go straight to YouTube Music, which is going to look like this. So when you're in the Google Play Store, which looks like this, you'll open the Google Play Store and then you'll search for YouTube Music instead of Google Podcasts. Thank you for bringing that up. That is news to me, so I appreciate you bringing that up. This is
You're welcome.
YouTube Music. Are there any other Android users that are that need a little help or might be struggling? Okay. Apple users, how are we
Question.
doing? Yes, go ahead.
Question. It's Spotify, right? I had Spotify before, but I had the subscription services. I no longer have Spotify, but the Spotify free version, that's not it, doesn't count, right? That's it.
There is a Spotify free version, and yes, you need an account. The only difference between the free version and the paid version is that the free version has advertisements every couple songs or every once in a while. Did that
Even the
answer your
podcast,
question?
even for the podcasts, or like how does that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they should have podcasts. Although there are some podcasts that require either a subscription or that require greater access in order to play them.
Okay, thanks. So.
Okay, I'm going to move over to our Apple users so we can keep moving forward. Any issues with either Apple Podcasts or Spotify that we're having?
Not with me. I'm good.
Okay, great. Anyone else? I will pause for another couple seconds and then we'll keep moving forward. Okay. So, that is where you can find the podcasts. Once again, for Apple users, you're going to find them on the Apple Store. And I actually did not show this to you all. So let me show that real quick. That's going to be, let me make sure I see myself. That's going to be this blue app right there. It's a blue app and it looks like 3 sticks in a circle. Because again, that is not a good view. Going to exit from this and show you one more time. Apple Store app. Okay, great. So for Apple users, this is where you can download all of your apps. I don't want to go into this down a rabbit hole on downloading apps because that is a little bit of a different subject. But in order to download either Apple Music or if you see the Apple Podcasts down there in the center of my screen, the purple app, you can download that in the App Store. That said, most iPhones will come with Apple Podcasts already downloaded. All right, any questions up to this point? Okay, great. Again, what makes podcasts so special? I love them because I often listen to them when I'm driving. For example, when I was in the Marine Corps, I had an hour-long commute every day, and I would listen to a podcast in the car wirelessly. I would not obviously be using my hands on my phone while I was driving, but it was something that I listened to every single day going to and from work. Additionally, I find it a very educational way of self-learning, which seems to be what everyone wants to do these days is free education and learning on your own, self-learning, self-educating, which is super important in a learning society.
Quick question.
Yes.
They mentioned cars, riding in the car. I think podcast also on satellite radio, right?
Yes, I believe so. But let me write that down just so I can confirm that after the class. Does that sound good?
Yeah,
You're talking about like XM satellite radio?
correct. Because I have my son has subscription on XM satellite radio, so on the car, but on the car, so just wondering about
Mhm.
that.
And that's basically like radio. So I'm not sure if I will look up if Satellite XM has specific podcasts that you can just choose and play on demand versus just tuning into satellite radio as a basically a radio. And whatever they have playing right now, that's what you can listen to. Do you understand? Do you understand the difference between those two? How I just
Yeah,
explained it?
yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so once again, this is a review. And if uh if someone from the iPhone side can explain how you download a podcast on an iPhone, go ahead.
It's just a file that you would select and then just click download, and it just downloads to your desktop or to a folder that you want it to go to.
Correct. Very good. So once you get on the podcasts app, you can search for your podcast and you'll see tons of different podcasts that come up.
Yeah.
And then after that, once you find what you want, you can either click play, which is kind of in the center of my screen, the play button. That'll just play it, assuming that you have a stable internet connection. If you don't, or if you want to save a podcast to your phone, then you can click those 3 buttons, those 3 little dots on the right side of the screen right here. Can everyone see my mouse hovering? That is 3 little dots that will allow you to download your episode
बॉल लेके मैं
right
कटाना
there.
get your ball.
I'm hearing somebody in the background speak another language. Okay. Do all of my iPhone users see what we're doing here?
Yep.
Are there any questions on using Apple Podcasts to search and play or download an episode or a podcast on Apple Podcasts?
It's pretty simple.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Just want to make sure everyone else is following because this is supposed to be an interactive, uh, you know, learning session. So I want everyone to try it and to see if they can find it on their phone, how to download or how to play a podcast. Okay. Okay, now we're going to talk about downloading a podcast on an Android. So I think it was Wilson that has an Android. Were you able to navigate to Google Podcasts?
Yeah, I'm looking at the search, all the podcasts they have. There are a few of them, well, many of them, of course, and I just want to play one and see if it sounds, let me play one and try it.
For sure. Perfect. Sounds like you're in the right place. Is there anyone else that's an Android user uh, that is currently trying or struggling with the Google Podcast app?
Yeah, it's working fine. It works great, actually.
Perfect. Awesome. And I always recommend click this search button, the explore button on any podcast app that you have. Search it. And even if you don't know what you want to listen to, just type in something that you're interested in, whether it be finance, whether it be news, whether it be Adam Sandler, whoever it may be, or whatever subject it may be, and you might find a podcast that you really love. Okay, and then this is the second slide on downloading a podcast on Android. What I want you all to know about this, I'm just going to slide this down. Under downloads, so you can basically tap auto downloading in your settings. So if you go to settings, you go to downloads, auto downloading, and then subscriptions, you can turn on podcasts that you want to auto download. Let me see if I can pull that up. You know what I think we will do is I will try to do the same thing on YouTube Music for anyone that is interested.
Sure.
On my Android, you have using a podcast app. There's a little arrow for download, a green arrow.
Can you show me what you're looking at?
Sure.
Okay, yes. And does it have a down arrow?
you click on it and it turns green when it's downloading it.
Yes, and you'll see it kind of like a wheel going around, and that's showing that it's downloading. Let me pull up YouTube Music. Okay, so this is YouTube Music. I'm new to YouTube Music, so it's going to ask me to sign in. I'm going to try to avoid that. And let's see. Maybe it's not letting me. Okay, there we go. So here I'm in YouTube Music and I have settings. I'm going to click on settings and then go to downloads and storage. And then this just shows your downloads. Because this is new to me, let me do some research on YouTube Music because I don't know how to do auto downloading on YouTube Music. Any questions from the Android community on either Google Podcasts or YouTube Music and how to download, at the very least, a podcast? Okay. All right. Why should you listen to podcasts? Podcasts have a great variety of inspiration or information and can inspire you to try and learn new things. We kind of talked about this. I believe that they are certainly a vehicle for personal and professional growth, and they're entertaining. Okay, so I have a couple podcasts. For Nancy and John, I know you wanted to open up to questions at the end, and you asked for about 20 minutes. So I'll do maybe one or two and then open up for questions. And then if we have more time, we can play some more. Does that sound good with
Great.
everyone?
Sure.
Awesome. So this is the Living to 100 Club, which is a popular podcast. What I'm doing on my computer is just pulling up the YouTube version of it, just because I'm screen sharing my computer. However, all of these that are podcasts are also available on those podcast apps if you just search them. So here's one example, the Living to 100 Club with Joe Cassiani. Can everyone hear this? Nope, that's not good.
We are all living longer, period. Some of us will live well into our 90s, maybe even to 100 and beyond. But will we live well at that point? Can we be excited about getting older? Well, it's time to turn aging on its head and celebrate aging. I'm Dr. Joe Casciani, and I encourage audiences to embrace the notion of getting older with a fresh, uplifting attitude. I want to encourage seniors to commit to moving forward, no matter the circumstance. I put a spotlight on keeping a positive attitude and determination about the future. What I want to ensure others that this determination is ours to keep. No one can take this spirit away from us. It's ours to keep forever. Whether we're still running marathons or confined to a wheelchair, modern-day centenarians have taught us plenty about living longer. My long career as a psychologist with older adults and their families has taught me about successful aging and what it takes to face setbacks and to overcome them. Let's get past the old notions that aging means decline, weakness, and other negative stereotypes. Let's plant a flag and own this new territory, this new vision. Drawing on my clinical experience, patient cases of setbacks and recovery, the latest science on longevity, inspiring quotes and stories, and a good dose of humor, audiences will hear powerfully positive messages about celebrating aging. They will learn solutions to getting over the bumps encountered and audiences will leave with a positive mindset about their future.
Okay, I'm gonna cut that a little short because that wasn't completely a podcast. That was more of a kind of introduction to his podcasts. I'd like to play Aging in Bloom for just a few minutes.
We come into this world completely and totally dependent on others, and there's no shame in it. Nobody ever held a baby and said, well, you needy little Grinch. That's not how we treat them. And we always need each other, all stages of our life.
Sorry about that.
We are looking forward our way. We're in Studio C in the 511 Studios in the Brewery District, just south of downtown in Columbus, Ohio. This is Brett. With me, as always, is Carol. Today's show is going to have a bit of a different slant.
Yes. How are you doing today?
I'm really good.
Good. Well, today, most families are multi-generational, and each generation has significant needs, and chances are they're a little conflicting needs. Many in our community have struggled over the past years dealing with not only childcare, but in many cases, responsibility for caregiving of parents and grandparents. Today's guest is going to provide us with insights on not just the caregiving industry, but also the challenges that today's families face, and most importantly, the hurdles she crosses every day communicating that information to the general public and to clients and families.
All right. And we want to welcome Lisa Stockdale. She is the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Capital Healthcare Network, and she's the host of Aging in Full Bloom. Take a moment, subscribe to that podcast right now.
Yeah, thank you, Brett.
Lisa, thanks so much for joining us today. I'll disclose this. I work with her podcast.
Yeah,
so
you're
that's
my
why
podcast guy.
Exactly. Well, thanks for joining us. We've had you on the list to talk to for a while, and it's just one of those, okay, let's get it scheduled.
Yeah.
And we think this is a very important topic, and you've discussed it a lot in your podcast as well, too, is how do we talk to each other about this stuff?
Sure.
One of the things that I found out, and again, for listeners, Brett and I always have this thing about who knows who. So we're putting you in his column this week because normally they're in my column that I know the guest and bring the guest in. But you and I have a really similar background,
We do.
Which I didn't realize. We both have degrees in sociology, social sciences from Ohio State.
Yay.
Yes.
The Ohio State University.
The Ohio State University. Go Bucks.
That's right.
We're taping this still in the middle of football
My
season.
friends would love that because they're big Ohio State fans. But I am not, so I'm going to keep going. One thing that I forgot to mention, can everyone still hear me? Yes. Okay. One thing that I forgot to mention was if we go to kind of this first page, you all see YouTube here. YouTube, if you're comfortable with it, is also another great source for listening to free podcasts. In fact, that's what I'm doing. Every time I go to these podcasts on my computer, I'm pulling them up on YouTube because it's readily available. Yes, sometimes, I have to wait for it to load. And yes, there are some advertisements. But that's another source for podcasts if you are on your computer. Or you can also play it on your phone, but YouTube typically requires you to have that screen open. So what's nice about podcasts is I can play a podcast on Spotify or Apple Music or another app, and I can click the off button on my phone, put it in my pocket with my earphones in, and it'll keep playing so long as I don't hit pause. So that's really that's the kind of the difference between YouTube and some of the other apps, is that YouTube is meant for active watching and listening. So if you were to be listening to a podcast on YouTube and then you turn your phone off, that podcast is going to stop playing. Okay, I've got a few more podcasts here, but I want to stop real quick. I see a chat. What about listening to podcasts on my Apple MacBook Air? Oh, that's a great question. Thank you, Nancy. I do believe that there are, let me confirm, Apple Podcasts MacBook. I will pull that up right now. Yes. So if you have a MacBook Air, Nancy, you should be able to do the same exact things on the podcast app. So if you can see this right here, as long as you have the app on your computer, you should be able to do that. Now, if you don't, the same thing applies. Apple Podcasts, MacBook download. Let me see if I can pull this up. Oh, here we go. So if you can see my screen still for the Apple users, this is the podcast app on the computer. So I'm not going to take more time on this just because we're starting to run low on time. But I encourage you, if you do have a MacBook, try to open up the podcasts or the Apple Music app on your computer because it should be the same account and everything as on your phone. Nancy, did that answer your question, or do you have any other ones?
I don't have apps on my laptop. My son told me not to keep apps on my laptop so it doesn't build up the space. So I was wondering how to do that without keeping the app permanent.
Okay. So I believe with Apple podcasts, it has to be through the app. And I will attempt to find if there's an online version, but I doubt it.
No, I don't mean that. I mean, there's a way to do it on the laptop. I just can't remember where you can use the app for that moment, but it's not permanent. It doesn't stay on your computer. You could get the app off. It doesn't stay permanently on the computer, so it doesn't take up the space.
Okay, I see exactly what you're talking about. So this is what you can do. I think you're talking about opening and closing it. So can you see my front screen right here?
What you have on the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
So this is the Apple Podcast. Do you have a Mac?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So right now I have Apple Podcasts open on my computer. I can use it. I can click on this TV and film or whatever I want to do. I can browse. I can search right here. I can look up what was the name? Dr. Cassiani. And there we go. Living to 100 Club. I found the same podcast from Dr. Cassiani on my computer, on my Mac. Now, when I'm done listening, right, I've clicked play. I'll actually do that one more time.
I'm not seeing what you're doing on the screen.
Oh, you're not. Okay. I'm sorry about that. Let me go back to this. Thank you for bringing that up. You are screen sharing. Let me modify this. How about now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So now I'm in podcasts, the app on the MacBook. What I was doing before was I just searched Cassiani, Dr. Cassiani, and I want to see if I can pull up. Boom. There we go. We have his page for his podcast.
You started that search from the app, am I correct?
Yes, through the app on the computer,
Okay.
not through the internet browser.
Right.
And so I can click right here, A Prescription for Happiness, written by Katie Wee, and it's loading and it's going to start. So that's that. Once I am done, okay, once I'm done with this app, let me show you here. I'm going to go, and it's kind of hard to, let me try to see if I can show you. Okay, desktop as a whole. Okay, so you should be able to see my desktop as a whole. Is that correct?
Well, it's a screen within a screen right now. I'm seeing,
Yes. Yes, so you can still see the app
yes.
open, right? So what
Mhm.
I'm going to do is when I'm done using it, just go up here to the red X,
Right.
click close, and then if you said you wanted to clear the space. So if you look on the bottom right here,
Mm-hmm.
you can see podcasts and music. You can right click. Hold on. Right click and then click quit.
Okay.
So what that's going to do is it's going to quit out of the session that I just had. I can do the same thing with music, click quit. And so you see there's no more dot under there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gone.
Okay.
If I really wanted to remove it from my home screen, I could right click options and I can remove it from my dock. So if I click remove from dock, that completely removes it from the desktop screen. That doesn't mean that I can't access it again. I would just have to go over here to Launchpad
Right.
and then find it here again.
Perfect. That's the question I had. Thank you.
Great. Okay. What other questions do we have?
A question. It's kind of basic, but so say I join or I start watching some of these podcasts and I'm in like a series. So there's like 10 episodes. I watch episode 1 and I guess the podcast or the computer knows that I did that. And then the next time I come back to watch episode 2, it automatically would download episode 2 into my folder or whatever, or would I have to like manually go get episode 2 and put it in to watch?
So you're talking about auto downloads on the Apple
Yeah,
Apple
yeah.
Podcasts. Is that correct?
You touched on it when you went through that page. I was going to say something. I don't want to get anybody in any trouble because we said we're holding questions to the end, but
Yes. Auto download. So I just want to make sure that that I'm saying the right thing because I don't use Apple Podcasts. So okay, okay. So yes, you can auto download episodes of a podcast page essentially. So if I go over to, I'm going to change the share to my desktop again. Okay, so we're on my desktop. We open up Apple Podcasts, or sorry, this is Apple Podcasts. Type in Cassiani. It's going to download when I click auto download, it's going to download all of them.
okay.
Where is auto download? So I'm not seeing it here on my computer, and I don't know if that's slightly different. I might have to get back to you on that one, Bill.
Okay.
But on your phone, it should download basically I know that it'll download every new episode that comes out, but I'm pretty sure it'll download all the old ones as well. But let me get back to you on that one if that works.
Okay.
And also something you can do is you can experiment with it, and you can try it. And if you don't like it, you just basically go to the same auto download and you click remove downloads.
Okay.
So it's very easy to play around with and experiment with. If you don't like it, you can always undo it.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks.
Of course.
Hey, guys, we've got about a minute left. Are there any questions from the gallery?
All right. Um, well, if I may, typically I wanted to save as much time for questions as possible, but typically we'll do a little quiz at the end, with a couple questions, before we get to questions. I'm sorry we didn't make it to that again.
All
But
right.
yeah, hopefully next time we'll do some quiz questions.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And if anybody has a question, they could just send it to John, and then we could forward it on and get answers. I have not myself been a big podcast fan, but I know that, like when you're in the car, which is just basically downtime, and if you don't want to get stopped by the police for, having your phone in your hand, you can just listen to it, it comes out of the speaker, and it's nice to be able to learn something while you're otherwise just driving around. So
And I learned about podcasts more than one that I knew about an hour ago. So thank
Well,
you both.
that's great to hear, of course. And we do a lot of, based on what Nancy just said, we do a lot of different other types of classes and training, when it comes to connecting to Bluetooth, or downloading apps in particular, because that can be difficult, as well as smartphone hardware basics, software basics, and so many other things. So please reach out to us. We also are starting to do some private training as well. So I'll stay on for a couple minutes if anyone does have any personal questions that they can think of right now. But if not, yes, I'm an open door. Please feel free to reach out, and we can help you out.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night, John.
Thank you.
Thank you for your help.
Yeah.
Of course.
And
Have a
podcasts
good
are a
night.
good way not to feel alone too. I came in a little late. I didn't know if you covered that, but it's a good way for those of us with Parkinson's not only to challenge our brain, but and learn new things, but also not to feel alone. That we're staying active.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah,
I did not
well,
mention that. So
well
thank you.
said.
Thank you
Well
for
said.
bringing that up. Yes, well said.
Okay, guys, we'll see you next time.
All
Good
right.
night. Thank you.
All righty.
Thank you.
Good night.